Hi friends, today I would like to share some tips and tricks on how to survive job loss, retirement, and also how to plan for if you have to leave your job. So this message is for a couple of friends of mine or people that I know or people who I don't know who, number one, have had to leave their job maybe because of illness or have decided to resign because of one reason or another, or have lost their jobs because there was cuts in the job market due to the whole USAID and all that NGO cut of jobs. And also people who are in the job right now but they're fed up and they feel like they want to move, or people who feel like they are being pushed out of their jobs. That can also happen. But also people who feel like it's maybe within a year or 2 or 3 they might need to leave the job market. So this is now sharing my thought processes as I was figuring out how I'm going to manage and if how I'm going to leave the job market and how I'm going to the formal job market, that is it, and how I'm going to manage myself going forward. Of course, everybody is afraid to leave, and when suddenly your job is taken away out of the blue, or you're sick, you've been sick for a long time and you cannot continue to work, or you've been laid off, or you're being laid off, or you're being overtaken by events, or in the workplace there's probably your particular job is going to be phased out. Anything can happen. This video is for us to prepare and to understand how I went about it and how you can go about it. These are my tips, but there are other tips. I realized when I hit a certain age that I did not want to be in the employment space for a very long time. And I knew that I wanted to leave, but I knew that I could not leave. And some of us feel like that. I could not leave because I need the money for family, I need the money for myself, and I need to survive. And I also need the prestige that comes with the job. I also needed the camaraderie, the friendship that comes with having that job and the connections that you get. I started to work backwards in terms of trying to understand, what do I need to do? If I didn't have a job today, what would be my struggles and what would I need to do to make sure that those struggles do not become a big thing in my life? The one thing that I had is that I had debt. I think as most of us, when you are in the corporate space, you can actually get, what are they called? They're called salary loans, which enable you to do quite a lot of things, buy land, do all sorts of things. Sometimes you get it and you waste it, but still, there was a salary loan that I needed to get rid of. And I was very, 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 very intentional about paying it off every month, painfully. It was so painful for me, but I had to get rid of that. Number two, let me actually read from my book so I don't forget. Putting some money away. I used to put my money in the bank, and then my sister, cheers to Camila, she told me, you know what, Anne, you put your money in the bank, but every month the money keeps being deducted for bank charges. I decided to put the money in the unit trust, which does not accrue so much, but at least instead of taking away, it actually gives you a little bit more money every month, more interest every month for the money that you leave in the trust. I thought that was a great idea rather than put it in the bank, because I was putting away my savings in the bank, but every month the bank was deducting bank charges. I also had this executive banking, corporate banking, which used to take quite a bit of money. Maybe $10, actually no, about $20, $15, $20 a month. $20 actually a month, which is quite a big deal, especially if your income is not increasing and you don't have more money coming in. I went into the unit trust instead. I also went intentional about overextending myself with my relatives, friends, who, as a firstborn, as a daughter, as a mother, as as somebody who's in a community, when you are working and you have an income, you have people that rely on you to help out. School fees, illness, death, any other challenges that come through in our community. You have to be part of the community. You have to contribute. I either cut down my contribution, where I used to give, let's say, 300,000, 500,000, a million. I went to 100,000 or 50,000, because that is what, in my circumstances, I knew I'd be able to afford in the long haul. I really, really went down on my financial what you call donations and community support. I put that down, not because I hated the people, but because I knew that I was not going to be able to afford those kinds of money in the long term, and those kinds of money would do so much for me at a level where I'm not earning so much income. So I cut down on that, and I cut down on the level at which I extend myself for all responsibilities. In our community, you have to go for burial, you have to go for funerals, you have to go for weddings, you have to contribute for birthdays, you have to contribute for road construction, you have to contribute for security, you have to contribute for all sorts of community things that we have to contribute to. I now look at the contributions that I have to make, and I pick out the ones that I feel are the biggest value adds to my community. I do not completely push out the community, but what are the biggest value adds? Or sometimes I decide to give time instead of money if I have the time, trying to make that work for me. I also went from an SUV. I used to drive a big SUV, and I started intentionally. For people who know me, they saw that for the last 2 years before I left my job, I left the big SUV, which was a fuel guzzler, and I went into a tiny Vitz, which cut my fuel consumption by 80%, surprisingly. And even for the parts, if the car has mechanical issues, the cost is like 80% less than what I used to spend earlier. So that is one of the things I did, and I think it's something that you could look at. SUVs are great, but when you know that you're not going to have a big income, you need to manage your resources. Go small, go frugal. If you look at my fingers right now, I decided that sometimes if I don't have occasions and stuff, I just cut my nails and keep them clean. I don't have to be going to the nail salon every week as I used to, because then I'll be bleeding more money than I want to bleed. Sometimes I keep my nails down, but if I have an occasion where I have to look like swoosh, then I go and do my nails. Or sometimes I buy my equipment and I do my nails at home. That can also work because I have the time. And then I learned to negotiate. I never used to negotiate. People would give me the price and I'm like, oh, fine. And then I buy. Now I negotiate. And I've also learned to go to those places where we do the shopping. Before that, I used to sit in my office and make an order. Bring me this, bring me these shoes, bring me that, bring me that. I never used to go to the markets because I was always busy anyway, so I never had the time. Now I actually go and negotiate, and I've found that a lot of deals are out there. You just have to look for them. I've learned to thrift. For me, for example, there are market days in the different towns in my where I live, and you will find something that you used to buy from somebody at, let's say, 50,000, and then you go find it in the market at 10. That is like, wow. I learned that you go and thrift. You be very intentional about what you're thrifting, but you also be thrifting on a budget. I've learned to thrift, and when I thrift, I can also still be very smart with my thrifting. That is something that I'm doing. I have learned to barter trade for services. Sometimes you don't need to spend your money for services or for something that you need. Sometimes you can sell your time or your service to get another service, kind of exchange, or you exchange goods for a service without having to exactly spend cash. I've learned to do that, and it's very, very helpful. Oh, I've also joined a group where I sell anything that I feel is clutter in my house. I don't sell things that I need because it hasn't gotten to that point where I have to sell what I need. No, but I sell everything that I look at and I know I'm not going to need I have not needed for the last 1 year. I'm not going to need for the next 6 months. Like things that are in our house gathering dust, sell them off and you put that money in a unit trust. I've also learned to continue enjoying my experiences on a budget. What does that mean? I like to travel. I like to go out and see things and see places and whatever. But I've found that I can actually do that on a budget. Rather than take the plane, let's say to Rwanda, I can take a bus. Rather than sleep in a fancy hotel, I can sleep at a relative's home, or I can take a cheaper Airbnb. And I can go with friends and we can share the rooms and have a good time, even have conversations into the night. Before that, it used to be hotel, you are alone. A very 5-star hotel, you are alone. And you're not even having time for conversations and whatever. Now, it's more like we can go share a room and have some very many good laughs with my friends. I've learned to thrift. I've also taught my children to travel on a budget. Recently, I traveled with my daughter. We wanted to have a good time in Ginger. And instead of getting her a room and getting myself a room, we shared a room. We shared the bed, and it was so much fun. We bought, rather than buy from the hotel, I bought food from outside, and we split it and enjoyed ourselves. We had a really, really great time doing that. I've also learned to make my own cappuccino. I love cappuccino. I love coffee. Instead of going to go every time I wanted a cappuccino, I used to send for it at Forgive Me Javas. I used to send for it, or like I always had to buy it from places where they make cappuccinos. Now I have learned to make my own cappuccino. I buy cappuccinos. There's some packages of cappuccinos in packets that I buy, which are so much cheaper. It cuts my cost by like 80%. Or sometimes I make it myself at home, and I still save money there, but I get to enjoy the pleasures of life of coffee. Yeah, simple things like, do you have to buy bottled water when you have filtered water at your home? Carry a bottle of cold water, if, like